Good morning, Sales Academy followers, listeners, tweeters, YouTubers, LinkedIners, Pinteresters, not Pininterest, it's Pinterest. Wherever you are in the world is, thank you for being here. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing. And the podcast is growing, its reach is growing, the audience is growing in the number of countries, but also in terms of the engagement. So thank you, because the messages we get through and you know, it's the byproduct of running the podcast where we share stories, but we touch on things that are personal. We touch on things that are relevant to individuals. And it's interesting when, you know, I've got therapists that I work with as clients. And one of the hardest thing about being a therapist is marketing your work as a therapist, because who genuinely openly wants to admit that they go to a therapist? Now, in some nations, it's cool, but in a lot, it's still kind of frowned upon, or there's a admittance of failure and all that sort of stuff. So it can be a difficult one, because getting testimonials from people going, yeah, I was feeling really messed up and I went to so-and-so and they fixed me. It's not necessarily, it doesn't happen like that either, but it's not necessarily an easy thing. So today's musing comes from that space of understanding happiness. So the conversation today is, if you want happiness, change your metrics. If you're seeking true happiness, don't seek happiness, change your metrics. And I'll come on to that in a second. But just to kind of jump back and go back to that theme in terms of the thank yous, is that people reach out and they message and they go, that your podcasts are really helping. And like the last episode I did was about that trickle over the waterfall. And it's not taken for granted the people that are in the background that are listening, that are in a space where they need help, they want support, but they're not necessarily there yet. They're not ready to take action yet, whether that be fear-based, whether it be whatever pressures they've got around them, but they are making that commitment to tune in regularly. They're making that commitment to reflect on some of the musings, to take them into their own space and go, well, how is that showing up for me? How's that? Where's that? What's that? They're asking those questions, following the little bears that have been poked with the stick through the musings that we're sharing. And that's the whole bloody point of these podcasts. You know, Sales Academy, my purpose, my personal life of purpose, and Sales Academy and every business I'm involved in, is the purpose is we want to get you thinking and acting differently. Guess what the podcast is called? Think and Act Differently with Sales Academy, because that's fundamentally what I get out of bed to do, and always have done. So reading different books over the years, I'm an avid reader and podcast listener and webinar and seminar attender and training and all that sort of stuff, because I'm on the receiving end of it as well as on the giving end of it. And there's a lot of congruency in that. And I think it's Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which yet another book that I feel I should have written, you know, and I don't know if anybody else has that, where you pick up a book and you go, oh my God, this resonates. I should have written this book. But anyway, I get that a lot, and just got to kick my own ass and write some books, right? So there's a section in there. There's a one of the chapters is called the Self-Awareness Onion, which is a beautiful one, where he goes into the kind of 3 layers of self-awareness, which is great. I've talked about that a lot in different episodes, but not in terms of an onion. That's the term he uses. But I like Shrek. Shrek uses the onion as well. Like, we're as complex as onions and stuff. We're all onions, and we just got layers, and you peel them back and stuff. The donkey, I think, in Shrek talks about that. But what sort of jumped out to me was listening to the book and sharing some stuff and conversations that have come up recently about this whole happiness metric and this success metric and stuff. And, you know, in Dan Stanley's book, we're in Rethinking Masculinity, where he's talking about the old-fashioned blueprint of men being the provider and all that sort of stuff. So you take that bit there, which is so powerful. What Dan's talking about is such a powerful movement for men who are feeling really, really lost and don't know where they exist anymore, because they've just been working, grafting, guilt-filled provider, but can't really balance that with being a dad and being what does a man of today mean, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a fantastic movement that Dan's talking about there. But if you go right the way back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and stuff, and it's like, I work in a space where I'm helping people, you know, the top of the pyramid, self-actualization, where you really feel and understand and get deeper into your own talents and what you're about and your capabilities. And so that realization, that understanding of you, that self-actualization is like the top of the pyramid. But if you go off the pyramid, like the next stage up, self-actualization, is where you go and help other people find themselves. And that's what coaches and therapists do. They, they go through a journey of discovery, and then they help others go through that journey of discovery through their own stuff. That's what we do. It's not about certificates and qualifications. It's about freaking lived experience. You know, who wants a textbook coach or a textbook therapist that can tell you the different psychological tests that have happened between. So listen, I was sat with a guy once, and he was an ex-offender, ex-heroin addict, went into prison, got himself clean, right? Got himself clean in prison. And then when he came out, his mum had got addicted to heroin while he was away, right? So he came out clean, but his mum was addicted to heroin when he came out. And she was buying from a really bad supply chain. So, and he knew the local area and he knew the local dealers. So get this, to keep his mum alive long enough where he could start to support her to wean her off the heroin, he went back to his old dealer to buy the heroin to supply his mum. Just try and get your head around that for a moment. Just let that sink in, right? So this whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you've got the basic fundamentals of the pyramid of a place to live, a roof over your head, food, shelter, safety, security, love, connection, those really, really important base fundamental things. None of the esoterical stuff, none of the big growth stuff can happen unless those things are in place. Now, something that jumped out in Mark's book was when he's talking about happiness and metrics and stuff, and it's linked, there's like a trifactor of happiness, values, and metrics. And it's like, it made so much sense to me in terms of people are measuring, or like constantly seeking happiness, but then they're at conflict with what's causing them happiness and what's causing them unhappiness, because they've got values associated with their version of life and their version of happiness, and other people aren't living up to those or meeting those. So the standards, the metrics that they're measuring either themselves against or other people against are not living. So now there's a massive disjoint, right? And this really, really stood out to me, because so many times in so many conversations I have with people, and I ask questions about where's the joy in your life and stuff like that. What brings you joy? Where's the happiness in what you're doing? Whether it be work and stuff like that. And how's that balance? I'm asking these gentle little questions that land at different times to different people, but they're big questions. They're little at the time, but they're big. They go in, they penetrate, And it's so often that the metrics for how they're measuring their success, measuring their happiness, measuring their joy are just so skewed. They're so skewed from their individual value code, and they've not done any real reflective alignment work, or they've been sat with somebody to hold space to enable them to do that alignment work of, well, how am I measuring what happiness is for me in work? How am I measuring what happiness is for me in a relationship? What happiness is for me in life, in my private life and stuff? We're not tuned to this stuff. We're not freaking taught it at school. We're not taught it growing up. There's so much adulting shit that our parents and our parents' parents and everything else just they never freaking talked about. So where are you going to find this out? You leave hospital as a parent with a red book, right? That basically wait to the social, not social worker, the healthcare worker to come around to your house and measure your baby in a couple of weeks. But here's a little red book. And, oh, by the way, do you know how to put your child seat in? That's it. I've got friends going through adoption. Oh my God, when you understand what people go through to adopt children, it makes so much sense. But why aren't biological parents having any of that, or needed to? So, the metrics for our success and our measurements for our success and our happiness, do we even know what that means? Do you even know what that means for you? Not for anybody else, for you. What does happiness mean for you? What are your values and how are they aligned? And therefore, how are you judging yourself and others? How are you holding the standard to yourself and others? What are your metrics? Because if you don't figure that metrics and that value shit out, unhappiness is the only destination, I promise you. So it's like figuring those three together to understand, this is my happiness, these are the values, this is why it's important to me, this is really why it matters. And then how do I benchmark that and measure that? And in that, there is a massive piece of acceptance and understanding that other people don't live the same value code as you. They don't live the same metrics as you. And they never, ever will. And it's only you that you hurt when you continue to measure them against metrics and values that they don't hold true. They might be yours, but they're not theirs. So when we get to that point of understanding and self-awareness and self-realization and self-actualization, when we get to that point, oh my God, there's a level of freedom that comes with that. And funnily enough, happiness follows quite soon after. That's today's musing. If you want true happiness, look at your metrics, change the bloody metrics. That's it, pure and simple. Hey, listen, if you want to come and have a conversation, if you agree with me, disagree with me, if it raised some thoughts in you, come and have a conversation, message me. I love you guys for doing that. Thank you so much. Have a brilliant day.